So horror video games, right? They exist. Then there's video games. No big deal, it's only the most popular form of entertainment out there. And it's kinda like movies, but they're interactive. And with video games, you got incredible experiences. Experiences that movies could only dream of replicating. Super Mario 64, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Portal, Wii Sports. Okay, video games are cool. Now if you combine the word horror to it, you get, oh man, I gotta censor that. Now, I am not qualified to be talking about horror games, not only because I don't really know what I could say about it that nobody else already has, but also the fact that I'm not really acquainted with it either. You explore a dark and gritty place, some cheap jump scares that was definitely made on someone's weekly allowance, and you ask yourself something that every known being still alive asks themselves every day. What the hell am I doing with my life? But while I've made it my life's goal to never talk about the horror game genre on the channel since, well, that, I am gonna make an exception this time around, but only just this once, because this horror game, this one in particular, you need an excuse to play. Five Nights at Freddy's, an indie game and also, in fact, a horror game. Wait, hold on. Yup. For as cheaply made as a horror game, originally releasing in 2014 on mobile devices, then coming over to consoles in 2019, at least on Switch as far as I'm concerned, could get. Now the reason I wanted to talk about this game at length was because compared to other horror games, it's nowhere near as scary, but also because this game drove me crazy back in 5th grade, and I never even played it until now. Where's the logic behind all that? Okay, good, that clarifies. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's, or FNAF as I'll just call it for the remainder of this video, was a popular game back in 5th grade. Almost everyone who had a phone in my school was playing it, and I don't know why. I mean, sure, I'm not one to judge people's interests in specific games or genres, but for some reason, the game just sparked curiosity within me because of how widespread it all was. I knew I didn't want to play it for reasons, but from seeing how popular it was, I was curious. And there were points where I saw fellow classmates were playing it and I just was sitting on the sidelines watching. But even then, I still didn't get the hype. Aside from the cheap jump scares, it just looked incredibly boring and simplistic. You couldn't even move around. It was unlike anything I'd seen for a game at that point. And when people offered me the chance to play, despite how curious 5th grade me was, I still refused. After 5th grade though, I noticed not as many people in my school were playing it, and the game's popularity was dying down significantly, despite the many sequels that were still being made. And to be honest, I couldn't even tell if people were playing one of the sequels or the original. They all looked pretty much the same in the end. And since then, I kinda just forgot that this series even happened. Until a few years back where I finally decided to do what 5th grade Omar couldn't. I bought it on Switch for $8. And I could have bought it on mobile for $3. And I still never made that investment back. Welp, no use whining about it, so I might as well play the game to get what the hype was 10 years ago. Welp, here's the title screen. Well damn, the developer really meant business when he made the first thing we see upon booting up the game a jump scare. Warning, this game contains flashing lights, loud noises, and lots of jump scares, and man, they sure don't make warning screens quite like they used to. But this title screen does kind of make a decent first impression. The eeriness of the main character, Freddy Fazbear, just standing there on the right side of the screen watching you as you decide whether you want to put yourself through what you spent $8 on, isn't all too bad, along with the eerie music. But enough gawking over the title screen, let's do what any sane person who's playing FNAF would do and press new game to start getting scared shitless. So the story, or hell, I would have a hard time even calling a story, is very run-of-the-mill simple. You see in a newspaper listing that a local pizzeria, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, is looking for a security guard to work the night shift, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. to monitor cameras, ensure safety of equipment, and the main appeal of this Chuck E. Cheese bootleg, the animatronics. Yeah, so it's pretty obvious the developer was inspired by Chuck E. Cheese here. Like you remember, right? They had that giant animatronic of Chucky on that rock stage that would perform a song or two every so often. Actually, the entirety of FNAF might as well be Chuck E. Cheese in everything but name because of the whole pizzeria premise. Now, I don't really know much about Chuck E. Cheese currently, but I do know that they did get rid of that animatronic Chucky now. As for its influence on FNAF, I wasn't sure if it was because Chucky was scary enough to warrant a game about how scary he truly was, But to the developer's credit, I will say though, it's actually not a bad concept for a game, honestly. Like, my takeaway is that I personally never found that Chucky animatronic as a kid to be all that scary, but I will say though, it definitely has a fairly unique premise and overall concept to it, which I really do commend. You're then thrown right into the game, but not before getting a voice message from the previous security guard who had this position prior to you. And as he's talking, you do get a sense of fear from being in this tiny office space where you pretty much spend the entire game in. You could check the security cameras of all the different rooms in the building, you can open and shut the automatic doors, and turn on and off the lights outside the door. But what's this? A battery percentage? Yeah, so everything is battery powered, and throughout the entire night from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., you have to strategically conserve your power while doing what you can do to keep yourself safe from the animatronics that I guess have a night mode and freely walk around the building. And if they get into your room, you get jump scared. Yeah, okay, I could see why that Chuck E. Cheese animatronic is scary now. Hopefully it's far away in a junkyard. But I just gotta mention though, that if this entire business can only afford running on a single battery to stay afloat, it really makes you wonder how they're able to pay you as much as they do. I mean, $120 a week isn't that much, but again, considering the circumstances, it's amazing they're able to pay me at all. But once you figure out what each button does and hearing what the previous security guard over the phone has told you because he gives hints at what it is you need to do in order to survive the 5 nights you're working, you're officially left on your own. Each of the 5 nights all acts as levels, with the first night obviously being the easiest and getting progressively harder as you make your way throughout. There are a bunch of different rooms that you check on the security cameras and how you have to see if any of the 4 animatronics are missing and are in different rooms, because when you see them in one of the rooms that are not where they're supposed to be, that essentially means danger for you because they're getting closer to where you're at. And oh, we can't have that, so we have to turn the lights on in the hallways to see if any of them are there, and if they are, then we gotta keep the doors shut until they go away. You also get subtle sound cues like eerie laughter and music when one of them are out and or nearby. And if the power goes out because you wasted the entire night keeping all the doors shut the entire time like I did the first time through, a music box take on the song Toreador March plays before you get jump scared. Okay, I take it back, $8 well spent. Now this whole game is really all about keeping tabs on these damn robots, and it's a relatively simple premise that does work. As a mobile to console conversion port, it actually feels like a game that works decently well on Switch. It could be the Switch's portability aspect or the simple gameplay, but damn it, FNAF actually functions, and it probably functions better than the other console ports, which I don't really know how that bodes for the Switch 1 in the year 2025 after the release of the technologically advanced Switch 2, but hey, nobody ever said the thought wasn't what counted. But going back on topic here, each animatronic all have different traits that makes you think strategically about how you should prepare for when one of them are nearby. Freddy Fazbear, the main character I think, who essentially comes out either when the power goes out or after night 3. You'll know when he comes out when you hear ominous laughter or if he's gotten closer to your office. And actually you could track where he is on the cameras because he'll usually make his way to your office on the right side and in the darker areas. You could see his eyes glow up in darker spaces, implying that's where he is. And also the kitchen, the only room in the building that you can't see footage of and can only track audio, you can actually hear his theme play when he's there. And also, a helpful tip I learned after losing to Freddy multiple times is that you can actually keep him from leaving the stage by consistently checking on him throughout the night. This will come in handy as you'll be able to save some battery power this way. Although it did get kind of monotonous, not gonna lie. Bonnie the Bunny, aside from having a name that also serves as just one of the puns of all time. Please don't leave. He's probably the one I encountered the most. Well, actually probably not. Maybe from nights 1 through 3, yeah, definitely. But 4 and 5, I definitely got ambushed by the other animatronics more. And to be honest, I don't fully know what Bonnie's traits are aside from coming from the left side of the pizzeria, and definitely being the fastest of the group. Like, you would not believe how many times I saw this guy standing outside the office when flickering the lights on, when just a second ago he was in the dining area. It was insane how quickly he moved. Oh, and occasionally he also does this. He's probably happy to have some attention. Foxy the Fox, this pirate fox dude who I guess in the pizzeria had his own spotlight separate from the other animatronics, but over time something must have went wrong as when you see his stage now, it's out of order. But story context aside, he definitely is more interesting trait-wise compared to the others, as he doesn't actually move the same way they do. Keeping him away relies on you consistently checking on his booth on the camera to see if he's moved at all. Like, for a while, you either won't see him or see him subtly peeking out of the curtains, and when it's the latter, always keep up with checking on him because he'll get you when you least expect it. He has 2 idle forms before he chases after you. The first one I already mentioned. This second one where he's slouched over it kind of looks like and has a very silhouette look to him with only his eyes lit up. Then if you don't check on him for a while and you see his curtains are pulled all the way back, close the left door as soon as possible because that basically means he's after you, and you could even see him sprinting down the hallway. Chica the Chicken, another animatronic with a name that's also a pun. Thanks for watching. She's not the animatronic I encountered the least, more on that in a sec, but definitely the second though. Her traits I also don't really know too much about, I'm just taking a wild shot in the dark here, except for the fact that she ambushes you on the right side just like Freddy, and when she gets into your office, she doesn't jump scare you right away, as it'll definitely take a while, and if you try to close the door or flicker the lights on the right side, you won't be able to. You can trigger the sound, but that's about it. Other than that, I'd probably say she's the slowest of the bunch, and also bizarrely enough, the funnier one. I mean, look at her face from this camera angle. I don't know why, but it's just kind of funny. Now this last animatronic is pretty rare and only comes out at random times, being Golden Freddy. He'll just appear slouched over in your office at random points and does. As for how to prevent him from coming or getting him to leave, I don't really know, but Golden Freddy. Why not? Okay, so we covered the basis of all the animatronics. Let's discuss the overall gameplay. FNAF's gameplay is very basic, but actually not boring. You spend the entire game sitting in your office with your computer to monitor them all, and these 2 buttons on each side of the office either allowing you to flicker the lights or close the doors. Checking the cameras are pretty crucial to FNAF, as this is how you track all the animatronics to either see what rooms they're in, or to even keep them from moving at all. The cameras will flicker every so often when the animatronics are in the process of moving, which makes it harder to track since you can't see them. They could be right by your office or even right outside the door, and yep, right on cue. And the battery power slowly goes down as the night progresses. It'll go down a lot faster when you have multiple things running, like keeping both doors on each side shut simultaneously, or constantly flickering the lights on one side then switching to the other, or vice versa. And while technically the main goal of the game is to keep an eye on the robots, I think another really important goal is not losing your battery power, which to me was the biggest challenge throughout the game. Obviously, there was challenge with not getting attacked by any of the robots, but the hardest part about doing so was being mindful of how much power you had at a certain point in the night. I think it does a really good job of keeping you on your feet and makes you think about not wasting your power unless you absolutely need to. The guy over the phone even says, don't use the doors unless you absolutely have to, which I think makes the gameplay more interesting. However, it does feel like the game is designed in a way where losing all your power is completely unavoidable. It might just be a skill issue, and I don't know if others feel the same way, but all 5 nights I played through, I've had instances where the power went out before 6 AM hit, and in a couple instances, a second or two before Freddy shows up. At first it feels like, damn, that was a close one, kinda giving you a bit of satisfaction that you got the night completed right before you lost. But when it started happening in the later nights, that's when I got the feeling that winning felt somewhat luck-based, to be honest, and personally, I'm not really a big fan of when games do that. I mean, it was satisfying getting to 5 AM with a decent amount of power to spare, but when the power goes out and the music box jingle plays that sporadically either gets shortened before Freddy shows up instead of playing the full thing, and that you knew 6 AM was gonna hit, I don't know, it just felt like the game knew I was about to win and just completely threw it out the window. It just felt kinda annoying a little bit. And again, it could just entirely be a me thing, but again, it did bug me, so take that for what it's worth. And another nitpick here, it did get kinda monotonous constantly monitoring 4 animatronics at a time too. Obviously, part of the fun was monitoring all the animatronics and checking the doors and being mindful of your battery. I mean, hell, that's literally the whole game. But when you have to constantly alternate between lighting up the hallways, checking the hundreds of rooms, animatronics like Foxy and Freddy who move based on whether you check on them or not, closing the doors if any of them are there and wasting even more of your battery, and also lighting up the hallways to check if they're still there before opening up the doors, it does put a sense of fear in you to avoid their attacks, which I think adds to the horror aspect, yeah, and I did just say that it makes you think strategically and makes things more interesting also, but it did get pretty monotonous to me after a while. I think it gives you a lot to juggle managing multiple things at once and makes it harder to keep up with everything going on. And it does make all the nights drag on for far longer than they do also. I mean, all the nights really don't last that long, to be honest. Again, they all get progressively harder each time and as they progress, but in terms of length, you're looking at around 10 to 15 minutes long, which I think is decent enough. It isn't too short to the point where you'd feel underwhelmed with how quick it is, but it isn't too long to the point where it starts to drag on. But again, when you're managing all the things I mentioned at once, it does feel somewhat longer than it is. Which, again, isn't a bad thing here. I am entitled to my own opinions here, so mileage will certainly vary. I'm just talking from the perspective of someone whose favorite games are are that. So far, FNAF really isn't that bad of a game. It functions, the gameplay is fine enough as simple as it is, and the challenge does keep you wanting to go back for multiple playthroughs. So why was I so scared to play this game back in my younger years? Let's get this over with. The jump scares, a crucial aspect of FNAF. This is how you lose in the game. If you fail to keep an eye on one of the animatronics or didn't take the necessary measures needed to keep them away, they'll appear in your office out of nowhere and scare the ever-loving shit out of you, and yeah, I definitely see where the jump scare comes from here. All the animatronics follow the same format with how they jump scare you. They wait a few seconds when you're not paying attention, then out of nowhere they pop out and fly right at you, making the same every time before the screen goes out. The only one who does it a little differently is Foxy, where instead of flying right at you, he jumps out from the hallway, but it still follows a similar format. Freddy himself actually has two different jump scares, one where the power goes out and the other when the power doesn't go out. But props to the second one though for the dark and glowy eyes he has. The first one, like when the power goes out, to be honest feels like it came right out of a Saturday morning cartoon, and isn't all too scary to be honest. It'll catch you off guard the first time or two for sure, but scare is a bit of a strong word for this one to be honest. And really, I never actually found the jump scare scary either. I think the whole part of why I didn't want to play this game as a resident 10-year-old was because when I saw the horror genre and I heard that there were jump scares here, that pushed me away without even seeing any gameplay. But now that I finally experienced it, the jump scares feel more like they'll catch you off guard slightly, and that's kinda it. And again, because they all play out the same, they do get a bit repetitive after a bit. If they were randomized a bit, not in terms of which animatronic it is, like if they play out differently, like each one has multiple, where someone like Foxy still has his normal one, but on top of that, he has one where he, like, I don't know, like flies through the window or something. Or Bonnie, where, again, he still has his normal jump scare too, but he also has one where he punches through the laptop screen. Well, I tried. I don't know, something like that would definitely enhance the jump scare aspect a lot more. If the developer is watching, please take note of this. But in their current state, they'll definitely make you jump, but they probably won't scare you, I guess. Now, visually, it's fair to say that this game has its charm. It's not actually great, but for a 10-year-old mobile game on console, it's really not that bad. There's a bunch of small details to sell you on the idea of this being an old pizzeria. There's posters everywhere, your office is small and condensed, and the atmosphere fits the bill for being what you'd expect from a horror game. Even the animatronics fit in with the spooky feel. They show signs of wear, their dark and glowy eyes, Chica has teeth, and even the animatronics designs in general. But again, some aspects of the visuals are better than others, although I can look past all that, especially considering it is a 10-year-old mobile game we're talking about here. And technically, mobile games from the early to mid-2010s don't really look that great, so I don't know, I don't really think there's a point to criticize here, but for what it's worth, it's fine. But the sound design though, man, this game hits it out of the park. Not in terms of soundtrack though. What soundtrack? Because FNAF mainly relies on using more atmospheric and subtle sound cues as part of its design. Whether it's the sound of the fan when you're sitting in the room doing nothing and just hoping that the night can just complete on its own, the striking noise of seeing one of the characters outside your office, the static of the cameras, the laughter or sounds that one of the animatronics make as they're progressing through the building. If this game is doing anything, it's not lacking in detail. But you're probably wondering, what happens when you survive all 5 nights at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? Well, let's find out. I should ask for a raise. But we're not at the end yet though, because after completing the 5 main nights, you get a star on the title screen, and what's this? A 6th night? Always knew this title was hiding something. And it is pretty tough. Is what I would say if I actually played it. Oh man. Yeah, so for some reason I kind of gave up after completing the 5th night and didn't even bother with playing through night 6. Not really sure why, but I think I just got too lazy to want to do it. But hey, I completed nights 1 through 5. I'm a real gamer, I swear. But unlike me, where if you do complete it though, you get the same completion screen now with a bonus instead of a regular paycheck. Cool. And you also unlock Custom Night. basically letting you adjust the difficulty of each animatronic to create your own difficulty option, which I guess is a cool enough reward, but it's like, I don't really care that much. Now, something that's there from the very beginning without the need to complete the campaign are cheats. 3 to be exact. One that gives you unlimited battery power, another that shortens the length of each night, hovering around like 5 minutes or so, and the map radar that lets you track which room the animatronics are in without even needing to see the cameras for that specific room. And I'd probably say the third one might be the best in my opinion. But even then, I'd probably say the game is at its best without these cheats enabled, to be honest. I mean, yeah, it does alleviate the problem I had regarding the battery going down too quickly, and does keep each night from feeling longer than it is when you're in a particularly tough night, but even still, I found the game to be more fun without these, to be honest. And you could even have all 3 enabled at once. And is it fun? I don't know. I'll tell you when I'm done keeping the door shut the entire time for all 5 nights and letting the game basically play itself. So yes. Well, I did it. I found the courage that 10-year-old me couldn't to play my first ever horror game, Five Nights at Freddy's, and make an overly hyped and critical review of it at the same time. And man, the community is gonna love me for that. But really, when I think back on my time playing this game, it actually wasn't that bad. It was incredibly basic, yeah, and the gameplay probably works best on mobile because of it. But really, when I think back on everything, the overall concept and gameplay is somewhat decent, and I don't know, I might have had a little bit of fun multi-managing everything through it all. And despite this being a horror game with an asterisk at the end, the jump scares might have gotten some startles out of me, that's simply a given at this point. And the sheer anxiety of not wanting to lose definitely kept me on my feet, which I could imagine was by design, and made things more interesting. And again, I did find the fact that the battery going out at the end of every night and feeling somewhat luck-based did take a bit of the satisfaction out of completing that respective night, in my opinion. And the monotony of constantly multi-managing everything did get pretty intense, I won't lie, despite being the whole point of the game. And again, despite being more of a me problem than anyone else, I still found the gameplay to be quite decent, and works fine enough in the end. Now, does it work fine enough for the billion other follow-ups that it has to be made? Oh man. And who knows, maybe someday we will talk about the follow-ups at length. But really, just playing one FNAF is enough for my mental state to be in a recovery stage for probably the next 5 years or so, but don't put it past me not to, though. Why am I doing this to myself? But yeah, that's about all I have to say on FNAF. You know, I'm glad I finally fulfilled one of my 397 goals to fulfill in life, and it was in the top 200, so that's even better. But hey, if playing my first ever horror game taught me anything, I'm not sleeping for the next 3 weeks.
What a discussion. Future FNAF games merely a possibility, instead of a guarantee. How disappointing. You may not know it now, friend, but from the very first minute when you started talking about FNAF, you started something you don't want to finish.
And that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing and checking out my other videos on the channel where you'll find more videos like this one. And again, thank you all so much for watching, and see you next time.